For decades, two names ruled the Bond universe: Sean Connery, Roger Moore. One defined the original Bond. The other reinvented him. But behind the suave suits and shaken martinis, was there respect or rivalry? Now, after years of mystery and whispers, the original 007 Sean Connery has finally spoken about Roger Moore, and what he says will change the way you see both legends forever. Do you think Connery or Moore was the better Bond Type 1 for Connery, 0 for Moore? And tell us why in the comments. Stardom Journey. Connery's path to stardom was unconventional. Before Sean Connery ever addressed the subject of Roger Moore publicly, he had already shaped one of the most iconic legacies in cinema history. As the original James Bond, Connery was the face of a franchise that redefined the spy genre and catapulted him to global superstardom. But long before the Tuxedos Martinis and Aston Martin's, Connery's rise to fame began in modest circumstances grounded in grit, discipline, and an unwavering belief in his own potential. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland, Connery's early life was far removed from the world of international espionage and red carpets. It wasn't until 1962 that Connery's career changed forever. Cast in Dr. No as the British secret agent, James Bond Connery was far from the producer's first choice. Many were hesitant about entrusting the suave upper-crust character to a working-class Scotsman with limited film experience. But Connery proved them wrong. His portrayal was a revelation, bold, virile, and laced with sardonic wit. He brought something entirely new to the role, an undercurrent of danger, a sense of world weariness, and a seductive charm that instantly captivated audiences. Over the next decade, Connery starred in a string of wildly successful Bond films, from Russia with Love Goldfinger Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, Diamonds Are Forever, and later, Never Say Never Again. A return to the role that showed his enduring power as the quintessential 007. For many fans and critics, he was Bond. No one else quite matched his mix of grit, glamour, and menace. Yet, despite the acclaim, Connery grew weary of the franchise. He feared being typecast and resented the studio's tight, creative control. Determined to prove himself beyond Bond, he took on a diverse array of roles that showcased his dramatic range. He earned rave reviews for performances in The Man Who Would Be King, The Name of the Rose, and The Untouchables, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. His portrayal of Indiana Jones's father in The Last Crusade added warmth and humor to his growing list of accolades, and roles in films like The Hunt for Red October, The Rock, and Finding Forrester further cemented his place as a beloved screen icon. Through it all, Connery remained deeply proud of his Scottish heritage. A fierce advocate for Scottish independence, he often used his platform to support political causes and promote cultural pride. He also contributed generously to charities and educational initiatives, particularly those benefiting Scotland. In 2000, Queen Elizabeth II knighted him for his contributions to film and drama, an honor Connery accepted with characteristic dignity, calling it one of the greatest moments of his life. Despite his towering presence in the industry, Connery was famously private. Known for his sharp mind, unwavering discipline, and dry sense of humor, he rarely engaged in Hollywood gossip or public feuds. Over the years, he carefully avoided questions about his successors in the Bond franchise, particularly Roger Moore, who took over the role in 1973 with Live and Let Die. While media outlets often tried to stir speculation about a rivalry between the two stars, Connery remained silent, neither praising nor criticizing Moore's version of 007. For years, fans wondered, what did Sean Connery really think of Roger Moore? Did he see Moore's lighter, more playful interpretation of Bond as a betrayal of the gritty realism he had established? Or was there mutual respect between two actors forever linked by a single iconic role? It wasn't until much later in life, after years of silence, that Connery finally broke that silence. In a rare moment of reflection, he offered his candid thoughts about Moore not just as a fellow Bond, but as a man, a colleague, and a friend. What he shared was far from the rivalry that many had imagined. Sean Connery breaks silence on Roger Moore. For decades, devoted fans of the James Bond franchise speculated about the true nature of the relationship between Sean Connery and Roger Moore, two actors forever linked by their portrayals of the world's most iconic secret agent. though both men wore the same tuxedo and delivered the same iconic line, Bond. James Bond. They did so with vastly different styles and personalities that set them apart in the public imagination. Sean Connery, the first to bring Ian Fleming's suave but deadly spy to life on screen, was rugged, intense, and brooding. His Bond was fierce and unpredictable, a man of action cloaked in cool elegance but always with a dangerous edge beneath the surface. Roger Moore, who succeeded him, took the role in a completely different direction. With his easy charm, razor-sharp wit, and an arched eyebrow that seemed to say it all, Moore's Bond was more playful, more tongue-in-cheek, and arguably more accessible to mainstream audiences. These differences fueled a decades-long myth that the two actors disliked each other, or worse, that they were embroiled in a private rivalry for the title of the real James Bond. The rumors were understandable. After all, the entertainment world is no stranger to ego clashes, and both Connery and Moore were proud, principled men with strong convictions and fiercely loyal fan bases. For years, Connery kept largely silent on the topic of Moore's version of Bond. He rarely commented publicly, leading many to wonder whether there was a lingering bitterness beneath the surface. But in one of his final candid interviews, Sean Connery finally broke his silence and, in doing so, reshaped the public narrative with a tone of grace, maturity, and heartfelt sincerity. Rather than fueling old rumors, Connery spoke with deep affection and respect for Roger Moore, not just as a fellow Bond, but as a man. "Roger was a gentleman through and through," Connery said, his voice laced with reflection. "He had a wit that was razor-sharp, but he never used it to harm. He carried the Bond torch forward in his own unique way, and he did it with style, with grace, and with a good deal of humor." Connery acknowledged the obvious that their approaches to the role were dramatically different, but insisted that difference was never a point of contention for him. In fact, it was something he had come to value. "When you create something iconic, it's natural to feel protective," he admitted. "I wasn't sure how I felt about someone else stepping into the role at first. But time gives you perspective. You come to realize that a character as timeless as Bond doesn't belong to any one actor. It's bigger than that. Roger brought something entirely his own, and millions adored him for it." Behind the scenes, Connery revealed the relationship between the two men was not one of rivalry, but of mutual appreciation. They would often cross paths at charity functions, industry galas, and even at Pinewood Studios, where Bond films were famously produced. Those encounters, Connery recalled, were always light-hearted and warm. Moore, he said, had a gift for putting people at ease. He could walk into a room and make everyone laugh without even trying. He never took himself too seriously, and that was part of his charm. One moment that particularly stuck with Connery was a brief private exchange at a UNICEF gala. Moore, a longtime ambassador for the humanitarian organization, had just returned from a trip to a conflict zone. Connery was struck not just by the stories Moore shared, but by his genuine compassion. He wasn't just lending his name to the cause. He was living it, Connery said. He went places most of us wouldn't go. He did the work. That's the kind of man he was. When Roger Moore passed away in 2017, the loss hit Connery harder than many might have expected. Despite his reputation for being reserved and private, he made an unusually emotional public statement calling Moore's death a tremendous loss not only to the Bond family but to the entire world of cinema. It was a rare window into Connery's deeper sentiments. Roger had a heart as big as his smile, he reflected. He gave so much of himself to others on screen, yes, but more importantly, off-screen. His commitment to helping children through UNICEF, his generosity, his humor. Those are the things I remember most. That tells you everything you need to know about the man behind the tuxedo. Connery's tribute was more than just kind words. It was a reflection of his own growth, a recognition that legacy isn't about who played the role first or best, but about the dignity with which one carries it. His comments helped dispel years of gossip and shifted the spotlight to something more enduring than competition, mutual respect, shared history, and the quiet bond between two men who had each in their own way defined a cinematic legend. In the end, Sean Connery didn't just pay tribute to Roger Moore. He reminded the world that greatness can come in many forms and that true strength lies not in rivalry, but in respect. His final words on Moore were a lesson in humility and grace and in the power of honoring another without comparison. And with that, two bonds so different yet so connected stood side by side in the hearts of fans forever. Early life and education before the world came to know him as the original James Bond, the epitome of suave sophistication and cinematic cool, Sean Connery's life was shaped by grit, resilience, and humble beginnings. Born Thomas Sean Connery on August 25, 1930, in the Fountainbridge district of Edinburgh, Scotland, his early environment was a far cry from the glamorous world of international espionage he would one day portray. The Fountainbridge neighborhood, known for its working-class roots, instilled in him a no-nonsense attitude and work ethic that would define him throughout his life and career. Sean was the elder of two sons in a modest household. His father, Joseph Connery, worked as a factory laborer and truck driver, while his mother, Euphemia Effie McBain McLean, cleaned homes to support the family. Money was always tight, and by the time Connery was just 13 years old, he left school to help provide for his family. He took on a string of physically demanding jobs, working as a milkman, lifeguard, bricklayer, and even polishing coffins. Each of these roles, humble as they may seem, shaped his strong physique and quiet, steely confidence qualities that would later become trademarks of his on-screen persona. His path to stardom was far from linear. At age 16, Connery enlisted in the Royal Navy, seeking a sense of purpose and direction. He served with pride, but his naval career was cut short due to chronic health issues, including a painful duodenal ulcer, a condition that ran in his family. After being medically discharged, he returned home and resumed his search for stability. What followed was a period of self-discovery during which Connery began to pursue bodybuilding as a personal interest. His dedication paid off. By his early 20s, he had developed an imposing and sculpted physique that earned him recognition in the British bodybuilding scene. It was during this time that he stumbled into the world of entertainment. A chance opportunity to join the chorus line in a touring production of South Pacific opened his eyes to acting and changed his life forever. Though he had no formal training, Connery's raw talent, commanding presence, and unmistakable voice quickly earned him roles on stage and eventually in British film and television. Bit by bit, he began climbing the ladder, building a reputation as a serious performer with untapped potential. But behind the polished exterior of Agent 00007 was a man who never forgot where he came from. Connery's working-class background and early hardships made him fiercely independent and often wary of the industry he now dominated. He was known for standing his ground both in negotiations and in matters of principle, and perhaps it was this grounded, fiercely loyal nature that made his long silence on fellow Bond actor Roger Moore all the more mysterious to fans. Personal life. In December 1962, at the height of his meteoric rise to global stardom, as James Bond Sean Connery made a rare move to step away from the public eye and into a deeply personal commitment, he quietly married Diane Salento, a gifted and fiercely independent Australian actress. The ceremony was private, almost secretive, a surprising contrast to the intense spotlight that had followed Connery since his explosive breakout performance in Dr. No earlier that year. Salento was no stranger to fame herself. An Academy Award-nominated actress for her role in the 1963 film Tom Jones, she was known for her raw emotional power on screen and her uncompromising dedication to the craft of theater. Far from just a glamorous partner, Salento was a formidable talent and intellect in her own right. Their paths had crossed in the early 1960s at a time when both were navigating pivotal moments in their careers. Their romance, described by some contemporaries as electric and intense, evolved quickly. In 1963, just a year after their wedding, they welcomed their only child, Jason Connery. Growing up in a household shaped by two strong-willed and artistically driven parents, Jason would eventually follow in their footsteps, forging a career in acting and later in directing. He gained prominence in the 1980s with his portrayal of Robin Hood in the beloved British series Robin of Sherwood, and he would go on to build a steady and respectable career, largely in independent film and television. Yet, despite the initial passion that bound them together, Connery and Salento's marriage began to unravel under the immense weight of personal and professional pressures. By the late 1960s, their once vibrant union had reportedly grown cold and distant. Friends and observers noted that the couple were often living separate lives, emotionally estranged and geographically apart. Connery's relentless filming schedule, paired with his increasingly guarded public persona, only deepened the divide. The glamour of Hollywood masked a growing storm behind closed doors. Over time, troubling reports emerged from within the marriage. Diane Salento would later publish a candid and controversial memoir, in which she accused Connery of controlling behavior, possessiveness, and even physical abuse. Her revelations painted a darker, more painful portrait of a relationship that had for years appeared glamorous from the outside. She described incidents of manipulation and violence, revealing the emotional toll their marriage had taken on her. The allegations were met with a mix of disbelief, support, and criticism from the public, sparking wider conversations about power dynamics, masculinity, and celebrity culture. Connery himself remained largely silent on the details of the breakdown, but his past comments about discipline in relationships, most notably a widely criticized interview in which he implied that striking a woman might be justified under certain circumstances, cast a long shadow over his public image. Though he later attempted to walk back or recontextualize those remarks, the damage to his personal reputation lingered. In 1973, after more than a decade of escalating strain, Sean Connery and Diane Salento officially divorced. The dissolution of their marriage marked a deeply painful chapter for both parties, exacerbated by relentless tabloid speculation and the weight of public scrutiny. For Connery, who had always fiercely protected his privacy, it was an unwelcome spotlight on a part of his life he preferred to keep hidden. The emotional fallout, particularly with regard to his relationship with his son Jason, remained complex for years to come. Just 2 years after the dissolution of his tumultuous first marriage in 1975, Sean Connery found himself stepping into a very different kind of love story, one marked not by volatility or public scrutiny, but by serenity, mutual respect, and emotional depth. This chapter of his life began when he met Micheline Roquebrune, a French-Moroccan painter known for her evocative, color-rich canvases that pulsed with emotion and personal meaning. Unlike the fast-paced world of acting and celebrity that had shaped Connery's earlier relationships, Roquebrune came from a quieter, more introspective world of artistic creation and contemplative living. And that difference, it turned out, was exactly what Connery needed. Their meeting was serendipitous unfolding at a golf tournament in Morocco. At the time, Connery was still navigating the emotional aftershocks of his divorce and the pressures of being an international icon. Roquebrune, elegant and self-possessed, made an immediate impression. Despite the language barrier, she spoke almost no English, and he spoke little French. Their connection was instantaneous and undeniable. As Roquebrune would later recall, "We didn't need to speak much. We understood each other with our eyes." Their bond transcended words, relying instead on shared energy, body language, and an innate mutual curiosity. One of the most powerful threads weaving them together was a mutual love of golf. Connery, who had developed a passion for the sport during the filming of Goldfinger in the early 1960s, often credited the game with providing him peace, focus, and a much-needed escape from the constant demands of fame. For Roquebrune, too, golf became more than a pastime. It was a shared ritual, a grounding force that strengthened their partnership over the years. Whether in the lush landscapes of Scotland or under the Bahamian sun, the couple spent countless hours together on the course, using the game as a way to relax, reflect, and reconnect. Unlike his first marriage, which had been burdened by emotional upheaval and the suffocating demands of public life, Connery's relationship with Roquebrune flourished quietly away from the tabloids and media glare. It was not a marriage defined by Hollywood expectations or red carpet appearances, but by genuine companionship, daily routines, and shared creative energy. Roquebrune respected Connery's need for privacy and autonomy, while offering him unwavering support first during the later years of his acting career and then throughout his long and intentional retreat from the spotlight. As Connery transitioned into retirement in the Bahamas, it was Roquebrune who stood steadfastly by his side. While the world wondered about the actor's silence in his final years, especially his reticence to comment on fellow Bond actors like Roger Moore, It became increasingly clear that his retreat wasn't one of bitterness or arrogance, but of peace. Surrounded by love, nature, and art, Connery had created a life of intentional quiet. Roquebrune nurtured that space for him, becoming his closest confidant and protector, and eventually his caretaker during his declining health. Their marriage, lasting over 45 years, was one of the few constants in Connery's life, a deeply private love story that endured until his passing in October 2020. When he died, it was Roquebrune who offered the world a rare glimpse into their bond. Her tribute was tender, honest, and heartbreaking. "He was my life," she said. "It's going to be very hard without him." Their union, rich in shared passions and quiet understanding, stood as a testament to Connery's growth not just as an actor, but as a man. It revealed a softer, more introspective side of someone often perceived as distant or guarded. And it helps explain why in his final years Connery finally chose to break his silence on figures like Roger Moore, not out of obligation but out of a readiness to honor those who had walked similar paths. In the stability and love he found with Roquebrune, Connery became more reflective, more at ease with the complexities of his past and the legacy he would leave behind. Their marriage, grounded in mutual admiration and built far from the glare of public life, allowed Connery to eventually open his heart not just to the world, but to the memory of a fellow Bond who, like him, carried the weight of a legend. Death. Sean Connery, the iconic Scottish actor who forever changed the landscape of cinema with his portrayal of James Bond, passed away peacefully in his sleep on October 31, 2020, at the age of 90. His death marked the end of an extraordinary life, one defined by transformation, resilience, and an enduring impact on global culture. Connery died at his home in the Bahamas, inside the exclusive Lyford Cay gated community in Nassau, a serene and private sanctuary where he had spent his final decades. Far from the flashing lights of Hollywood and the clamor of celebrity, Connery found peace in the tropical calm of island life, surrounded by ocean breezes, golf courses, and, most importantly, the people he loved most. The news of his passing was first confirmed by his family and quickly echoed by Eon Productions, the studio behind the James Bond franchise that first made Connery a household name. Though no official cause of death was released at the time, the world mourned in unison, recognizing that an era had truly come to a close. Tributes poured in from actors, filmmakers, world leaders, and fans, each honoring the legacy of a man who, more than anyone else, embodied the charm, grit, and complexity of modern cinematic heroism. It was Connery's only son, Jason Connery himself, an actor and filmmaker, who shared more intimate details about his father's final moments. Speaking with quiet reverence, he described a peaceful death surrounded by loved ones and marked by dignity. "It was a gentle passing," Jason noted. "He had been unwell for some time, but he went the way he would have wanted, without pain. N. Ne oe. Asmeli. Bye." The day after the announcement, Connery's widow, Micheline Roquebrune, offered the world a deeply moving insight into the private battle her husband had been quietly fighting. In a candid statement, she revealed that Sean had been suffering from dementia in the final years of his life, a heartbreaking reality that had been kept from the public out of respect for his privacy. The condition, she explained, had gradually eroded the sharp intellect and magnetic presence that had defined him for decades. "It was no life for him," she said with sorrow, "but at least he died in peace, and that is all I could ask for." For those who had admired Connery for his commanding voice, quick wit, and striking confidence, the news came as a sobering reminder of the fragility behind even the strongest public figures. Dementia had dimmed the light of a man who had once stood at the pinnacle of global stardom, but it had not taken away his essence in the eyes of those who knew and loved him best. Micheline's words revealed a more vulnerable human side of Connery, one rarely seen by the public, but cherished deeply by those close to him. Their marriage had lasted over 45 years, a rarity in the world of entertainment, and was built on mutual respect, shared passions, and a deep emotional bond. In his twilight years, Roquebrune was Connery's constant companion, his caretaker, and his emotional anchor. She had seen him through the highs of critical acclaim, the controversies of fame, and the quiet retreat into old age. In her grief, there was also a sense of profound gratitude for the time they had shared, the life they had built together, and the gentle farewell that marked his passing. Approximately 1 month after Connery's passing in December 2020, the entertainment news company TMZ was able to acquire a copy of the official death certificate that acknowledged his passing. According to the paper, the major cause of death was pneumonia, which had resulted in respiratory failure, causing the individual to pass away. Both the degenerative consequences of old age and his struggle with dementia contributed to the worsening of these ailments simultaneously. In addition, the certificate stated that Connery had passed away at precisely 1:30 a.m. on October 31st, which served as a precise timestamp for the moment when the world lost one of its most lasting film icons. Connery's remains were treated with a great deal of care and regard when the cremation process was completed. It was finally decided to repatriate his ashes to Scotland, both in line with his desires and as a respect to the great Scottish ancestry he had. It was verified in 2022 that the ashes had been dispersed in a number of areas that were significant to Connery and his legacy. This was done out of respect for his memory and to minimize unwelcome public intrusion. However, the family had made a conscious decision to keep the specific locations confidential. Through the use of this symbolic gesture, he completed the progression of his life. From his modest origins in the streets of Edinburgh to ultimately returning to the soil of his beloved hometown, he has gone from being a worldwide superstar to becoming a global superstar. The news of Connery's departure caused shockwaves to go around the world, which in turn prompted an outpouring of sadness and contemplation from fans, celebrities, and colleagues alike. In particular, the entertainment sector replied with passionate tributes and recollections as a kind of emotional support. Sam Neill, who had worked with Sean Connery on the set of The Hunt for Red October, recalled him with fondness and spoke of the charm and warmth that Connery exuded when he was behind the camera. The actor who played Connery's co-star in The Rock, Nicolas Cage, referred to him as a mentor and a cinematic force that was unlike everything else. Oscar winners Robert De Niro and Michael Bay also offered personal memories, while Tippi Hedren, a great actress, paid tribute to his contribution to the history of film. A large number of Connery's contemporaries and younger performers who had idolized him have paid tribute to him. These actors include Alec Baldwin, Hugh Jackman, George Lucas, Shirley Bassey, who is famous for singing several Bond themes, Kevin Costner, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Barbra Streisand, and John Cleese. Additionally, Jane Seymour, who played one of the Bond ladies in the film Live and Let Die, expressed her condolences and recollections, highlighting the singular presence and influence that Sean Connery had on the Bond franchise. It was only fitting that performers who had previously played James Bond, such as George Lazenby, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig, paid their homage to the late actor. Every single one of them admitted that Connery was the one who established the groundwork upon which all later depictions of Bond were constructed. Connery's long-standing peer and friendly opponent in the Bond world, Roger Moore, passed away, and even his family released a public homage which brought all of the Bonds together in a communal state of bereavement. In one of the most heartfelt tributes, Connery's close friend and fellow actor, Michael Caine, referred to him as a tremendous star, a brilliant actor, and a wonderful friend. Caine's words were among the most moving. The true warmth and loyalty that Connery had exhibited to individuals in his inner circle was highlighted by Caine's statements, which highlighted the fact that their friendship had crossed both personal and professional spheres over the course of several decades. In order to commemorate Connery's breakthrough contribution to the film industry, the producers of the James Bond series, Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, released an official statement. They admitted that Connery's portrayal of the seductive and charming secret agent had altered the globe with his gritty and funny representation of the character. Additionally, the producers stated that there is no question that Connery was a significant contributor to the success of the film series. They also stated that the legacy of James Bond, which is now a lasting part of popular culture all over the world, owes its success in great part to the foundation that Connery had laid. They came to a conclusion by stating, "We will be eternally grateful to him," which was a feeling that was acknowledged by millions of people all around the world. It was a period when one guy could define a brand and become an international icon, and the passing of Connery signaled the end of an era. It was an age of old-school charm and imposing screen presence. His impact on the film industry and his position in the hearts of fans will go on forever, even if he is no longer with us. Did this revelation change how you feel about the Bond legacy? Should Connery's letter be read publicly at a future Bond tribute? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Hollywood revelations like this. Because behind every legend is the truth the world was never meant to hear.